Hello, welcome to this class we are having in MEG 14, Contemporary Indian Literatures in English Translation. As you see, we are having this class without the very helpful presence of Renu Bharadwaj, the moderator that you've all become very familiar with. I hope her absence does not tell too badly on the proceedings of this program today. We shall be basing our talk today on a book called Karukku. We shall explain the meaning of the word Karukku by and by. We shall talk about both the Tamil original and the English translation. The English translation has been done by Lakshmi Holmstrom. She's been prescribed for your course. She's a very well-known translator. She's internationally known and she's won many awards. She's an award-winning translator. Now, wherever I feel the need to quote from the original, I shall render the lines myself in a rough and ready functional translation, because that will keep up the tempo of my argument. Now, reading them out in Tamil will not make any meaning to you, because most of you are not Tamil speaking at all. Karukku is about the experiences of a Dalit Christian woman. It is a work by a Dalit about Dalits, and therefore it is fully in keeping with the spirit of the Dalits today, that whatever is written about them should be written only by them. They're not willing to accept writing on them by the upper castes or anybody else any longer. They do not want sympathy. They do not want any portrayals of themselves by others. They do not want spokesmen from other communities, because they say that even if this portrayal is sympathetic, it only entrenches their position of dependence. They don't want that. So this novel, this is an autobiography, Karukku, fits in very well with this particular attitude among the Dalits. Now, Bama, the writer, is among those very, very few enviable writers who have shot up to fame with their very first book. She's also among those who derive a special identity from this book. The book becomes an extension of their own selves. She's called, in fact, Karukku Bama. After the book came out, she was known by this name. Now, before we proceed further, I'd just like to point out that Karukku reminds me in many ways of Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin. I'm sure many of you have read it. It was written, I think, at least a century ago. But they both deal with the same theme of human beings inflicting barbaric cruelties on fellow human beings on the basis of color or on caste. I think they are very similar in many ways. Now, what does Karukku mean? The word does not figure anywhere in the book. Bama uses it as a symbol. The word means the leaves of the palmyra tree. These leaves have saw-like edges, fine-toothed, sharp cutting. They can hurt, but they can also be used as weapons to inflict hurt, inflict wounds on the enemy's body. This is how Bama describes the decision to name her book Karukku. I'm doing a free translation of what she has said in the preface. The saw-like rims on both lengths of the palmyra leaf can wound easily. To highlight the various ways in which the Dalits live stifled, fractured, and peripheral lives, and from my own desire to see Dalits break down the curbs that enslave them, my desire to cut away the shoots of enslavement that coil round them, and my desire to save their natural faculties of aggressiveness, I decided to name my book Karukku. The book brought her fame, but it brought hostility too in equal measure. The brickbats equaled the bouquets. The people of her town boycotted her. They refused her rights of residence there. She was a traitor, they said. She had portrayed them as a contemptible and worthless lot, not very different from the pigs and dogs that loafed around the dust-ridden lanes of the town. this active hostility from the very people that she was championing, whose lives she wanted to wipe clean of the stigmas of untouchability. This shattered Bama far more than the brickbats that came her way. They said, for instance, what kind of book is this? What kind of writing is this? What kind of style is this? All these things were thrown at her. But that didn't hurt her, nor the fact that it also brought her fame. They said it's a new style of writing, that kind of thing. None of these things really moved her too much. But this active hostility from the people she wanted to champion, her own people, that hurt her. She said, the uprising from her own people, about this uprising from her own people, she said, I had never expected such a reaction. I don't understand it. I had not written the book for the purpose of debasing them, for the purpose of poking fun at them or caricaturing them. It was many months before they understood this and accepted her and Karukku. But the fact that it upset her so easily is very important. This fact highlights an important aspect in the growth and development of Bama herself, the narrator of Karukku. By the way, Bama is her pen name, it's not her real name, and I don't see any clue of what her real name is in either the translation or the original. I suppose it doesn't matter, we call her Bama. This internal development, this journey within that she makes from the black holes of caste and religion to a state of being above caste, above religion, is the central holding theme of the book. In her narration of this development, she shows a clear and objective bent of mind. She's not afraid to point out the faults of the Dalits too. They are disunited, she says, without mincing words. They spend their time and energy on petty quarrels over bits of land, or in planning silly acts of tit for tat, silly acts of revenge. Here are some of the examples of the kinds of quarrels among the various Dalit castes. There is the caste called the Parains. The Parain is the caste to which Bama herself belongs, and there is a caste called the Challiyars. This is a caste slightly higher in the hierarchy because it has a little more money, it has a little more clout, but they too are Dalits. Now they are at each other's throat over land in which the Parayas bury their dead. This land is ours, the Challiyars are claiming. The Parayas say, no, it is not yours, nothing doing. There they are fighting over this little piece of land, and stabbings and stone throwing and plain hooliganism break out. The police land up, bribe money from the Challiyars. They have some amount of money, so they are wasting it now this way. It flows like water. A case is registered. The police thrash and lock up the Parayas. The women first howl and then settle down to carry on the business of living. It turns out well in the end. The case gets settled in the Parayans' favor, and the men come out of jail to songs of welcome, to songs of all kinds of celebration from the women folk. Okay, the Parayas have won. But what kind of victory is this? The question throbs in the undercurrents of the narrative voice. She's not asking this question explicitly. It is still implicit. It becomes explicit later. Here are some of the things she asks. Is this victory of ours going to foster good relations between the two castes? Are they going to forget their grouses and grievances? Are they going to outgrow their urge to grab the other's possession? Are they going to become loving brothers overnight? Have legal interventions and law courts' pronouncements ever changed innate attitudes and habits of thinking? Questions like these vibrate in the undercurrents of the narrative voice, as I said. Now this indignation comes out openly when she's narrating another caste rumpus that breaks out in the town. This time it is between the Parains, her own caste, and the Pallars. That is another Dalit caste. Now this one is even more pointless. It is over a couple of bananas. A Pallar cartman is going along with his cartload of fruit, and a Paraya boy, the caste from which Bama comes, a little boy just steals 2 bananas from the back of the cart, from the rear end of the cart. The pariah cartman explodes in abuses. The pariahs, the parlour cartman explodes in abuses. The pariahs come out with the counter abuses and attacks and stone throwing. The whole rioting scene starts all over again. At this time, some elders intervene and manage to stop the rioting. But the two castes come to blows soon after. In a ration shop, some amount of order is restored because of the intervention of the elders, but then again, they flare up again. Stones fly from both sides. Pariah women, now this is really funny. This time when they begin rioting, stones are flying from both sides. The pariah women bring out idli steamer lids, which they use as shields to protect themselves against the flying stones. You can imagine the picture, the pariah women coming out with idli steamer steels held against themselves. The police come, everybody scampers off, and things quieten, till the pariahs hack to death a Parava boy going into the woods and bury him on the spot. Till the Pallars, this is not the Pallars hack to death a Parava boy going into the woods and bury him on the spot. The Parayas dig up the body. They kill in retaliation a Pallar boy who is returning home from his goats. With his goats, He's returning home with his goats. He's a goat herd. The Parayas kill him. And this time rioting breaks out in a really big way. The police come, they lock up the rioters, they register cases against them. Of course, we all know the same thing is repeated. And now this is the time when the indignation in Bama's voice breaks out in the open and it rises to disgust. This is what she says. There's a case going on. The case is on with adjournments one after the other in a string. Because of the case, the scoundrels of both sides are skulking around with mouths shut, eyes sharp, and ears cocked, on the lookout. God knows what's in store. Tearing into each other this minute, and the next minute, they lick each other all over. They're no better than dogs. And suddenly again, they let go with fists and feet, yelling for blood. What stinkers they are, this pariah zat of ours. 100 times a minute they fly and claw at each other. Of course the upper castes laugh their heads off. Why won't they? These shameless, witless pariahs, bereft of the common sense to see the need for staying united amidst the numerous other castes packing the town. Scratch, kill, stab is all they ever do. How can they not remain underdogs all their lives? This is what Bama says in the open. Now, this quality of not covering up for anyone, not even for her own community and caste, of proclaiming the faults of all who call for it, is the distinguishing feature of Karukku. It makes it more than just confessional writing. We see this trait in action in a particularly intense and blazing way in the sections describing what she saw in the convents and religious orders she joins. Her charges against the nuns and priests of the church are clear and unsparing. Number one, they do not lead the simple and godly life driven by infinite compassion for the poor that they preach and which the Bible calls upon them to lead. They do not love the poor. Here are some of her observations. God was born poor. He lived poor. He died poor. In the church, standing on the pulpit, they quake with ecstasy, proclaiming this. But if the poor so much as stray into the convent or the school, they fall upon him like a pack of rabid dogs. Each time this happens, the line from the Bible flashes into my mind, the line which says, "If you judge a man by his outward appearance, you commit a sin." And of course, on this line also, they wax eloquent and go blah blah for hours together at meditations, at special meditations and special meditations. This is what Bama says about the nuns and the priests in the church. This is not the worst part of it. There are many other things that she talks about the nuns. One of them is the way they inflict corporal punishment on the children. Here are some examples. Corporal punishment, physical punishment. Now one day, when I was reciting the prayers, the sister turned up suddenly. I became nervous. I made a mistake. Almost the first thing she did when she came in was to give me a knock on my forehead. I happened to have a big, wide forehead, and I nearly died of the pain. My forehead began to swell where she struck it, but she wouldn't let me off. I continued to recite the lines of the prayer, weeping as I did so. Another one. Once when I was dozing off and the sister slapped me, I was so startled that I wet myself. She gave me a few extra blows for that. I screamed out so suddenly, so loudly, that my mother came. She cleaned me up and carried me away. Now, these are not the things that really matter most to her. There is something else much worse than these things. And what is that? This is the idea of a preordained destiny that they planted into the Dalit children's minds. Instead of making them healthy, active opponents of the caste system, the sisters' behavior taught them to meekly comply with the status quo. For Dalits, things cannot but be so. There is no other refuge for them, was the message that they conveyed to the children. Look at the things they said and felt about the Dalits. Here are some of them. How can we allow these people entry into our houses? Even if we do, they wouldn't dare come. They jolly well know their places. Another one, we can do nothing for these creatures. We shouldn't. If we do it, it would be like nursing snakes. Another, even if we go out of way to help them, they wouldn't become any better. They just are that way. This one, now look at this. Nowadays, these creatures, mind you, these creatures too go around smartly dressed, so we can't spot them as easily as we could before. Now, this vicious, deliberate policy of deforming the mind, weakening it, enfeebling it, being carried out by the nuns was the last straw for a woman like Bama. Bama, who is outspoken by nature, who is strongly sensitive to the systematic debasements heaped upon Dalits and Dalit children by the Varna philosophy. She had no option but to leave the convent. She snapped ties with the convent. It was a major decision. It was more major than the decision that she had taken of entering the convent. She had taken the decision to enter the convent in spite of what the nuns did, in spite of what she had gone through herself, because she wanted to show the world, she wanted to show the nuns what it was to be an ideal nun. She thought she could be an ideal nun if she just got the training to be a nun. Her parents again opposed her. She wanted to leave this particular convent and go to a training college to become a nun. Her parents opposed her decision. But you may ask, I think I also wondered at first why her parents were opposing her decision to leave the convent when they had opposed her decision to enter it in the first place. Now the answer, I think, is only this, that parents always want the children to settle down soon. They are not interested in the inner difficulties of the children, of inner resistance and so on. They just want their children to settle down soon. This was the case with Bama's parents also. This is the case with all parents, whether they are Dalits or non-Dalits. Bama, of course, left for the simple reason that she just couldn't take it anymore at the convent. She leaves and she steps out into what? Into a sea of uncertainties. But along with the uncertainties, she woke to a sense of hope, of confidence. For all my worries and anxieties, a joy sparks deep in my heart somewhere, she says. An energy, a spirit of daring stays. The belief that I can live and also the desire to live stay indestructible. At the moment, I cannot see my way through. This is Bama talking. Yet, I feel I can live a life useful to others, a life of meaning. In any case, I tell myself, this is very important, it's far better to live a life shedding real tears than a life laughing false laughter. The false laughter is the laughter that she had to do in the convents. It's far better to shed real tears than laugh falsely. It's not just bare courage on which this hope rests. She finds material proof for believing that being a Dalit without feelings of shame, living a life of self-respect, is entirely possible. The Dalits are no longer the humble yes men and yes women they were, she says. They have woken to the cruel truth that they had been utilized as instruments by the upper castes for their own advancement. This truth has sunk into their consciousness. This larger awakening among the Dalit masses sustains her own optimism, nurtures it. The book ends on that note, but we cannot end our analysis on that note for the simple reason that Karukku demands attention at a bare linguistic level in addition to its ideas and thinking. The language of Karukku, which is Tamil, is splendidly colloquial. I can only call it that. It is splendidly colloquial. It is musical to a degree which is, I think, not there in most other writing. It is the idiom of a people in whose lives books and writing are yet remote from the business of speaking. Books are not the shaping influences of language that they are in the lives of other communities. Tamil Dalit speech, as recorded in Karukku, springs directly from sensory impressions that simultaneously and spontaneously stimulate voice and tongue. There is a lot of onomatopoeia in this childlike idiom. Onomatopoeia, as you know, is the reproduction of the sounds of an object, natural or mechanical. The clip-clop of a horse, for example, or the chug-chug of an engine. I'm just giving you some examples of onomatopoeia. In Karukku, onomatopoeia is employed in a most natural and unself-conscious way, especially in the sections that describe the scenic beauty of the town. Let me give a few examples. Now, I'm going to do this in Tamil. I know this is a bit of a risk, but since most of you are not Tamil speaking, but I'll leave it, I'll trust to the rhythm and the repetitions, plus some words of explanation I shall give you that will give you an idea of the force of the rhythm. Here is one example. Kulugulun katu. Katu means breeze. In this instance, slightly chilly. The word for chill in Tamil is kulu. In repetition, in Tamil speech conventions, a soft consonant often becomes hard. Thus, kulugulu. The katu, the breeze, blew. Kulugulun katu. Kulugulu. One more example. The context here is of little boys plopping into ponds filled with rainwater and throwing their limbs in all directions. Tataka putaka is the term in the Tamil. Tataka putaka. Now, I think that term does evoke the sound of arms and legs threshing in the water, the rippling and gurgling of water. I think it does. This onomatopoeic quality is very difficult, if not impossible, to capture in English. Each language has its own onomatopoeia. Now, Bama carries over the childlike qualities of this particular onomatopoeic idiom to those sections of a book which are more intellectual. In these sections, the emphasis is on ideas, on the psychology of the nun's behavior, on the extra harsh conditions of living that the Dalits face with advancing industrialization and the source of cheap labor in factories that the Dalits have become. The emphasis here are not on the simple, easily registered things of life like wind and water. The emphasis here is on more intellectual things. The joy and wonder of the earlier sections give way here to the frank, open rage of a child which is no more a child but a fully aware and awake individual. Here is an example of this raging. This is Bama talking. Why should I go for prayers every day? Why should I get communion every day? Questions came crowding into my mind. The priests and nuns had been playing jokes with me all along. I thought, My belief all this while that God would come to me via the priests and nuns wore thin. They seemed like people without God altogether. I began to dislike all they did. I cross-questioned them. I fought. Deceivers, play actors. Hatred quivered within me. Now let us now come to Armstrong's translation of lines such as these. Take this line where Bama describes the routine of Dalit boys and girls slaving in match factories. This is the line. Even small boys, half asleep and swaying, ladling some broth in carriers, come up tottering to the van and rattle off to slog in the factory. That is the gist of what she says. This is not the exact translation, but that is a functional translation. But this is a gist of what she says. Now, I shall at this point revert to the original Tamil to explain the conspicuous, vivid phrases of these lines, and I shall consider the problems that phrases like these make for translations. Now, for the term small boys, the Tamil is a very figurative term, which means even lads no bigger than crabs. Crabs. The word crabs stands out and catches the eye and attention of the reader. Then there's the phrase half asleep and swaying. The Tamil original evokes what I can only call the smell of sleep, the smell of the warmth of the body and breath induced by sleep, which is present even when the sleep is cut short. And then there's the phrase, come up tottering to the van. The Tamil for all these 6 words is just one word. Now we shall forget this translation altogether. We shall keep in mind only the fact that there are these highlights in the original, and now we shall turn to Armstrong's translation. Here it is. These tiny crab-like children pour their koor into their carriers, half asleep, totter along to the van, climb in and go off to work. Now obviously the simile of crab for small boys, the images of the half-asleep state of the boys, and their tottering up to the waiting van, all these things have caught the attention of the translator, just as they caught ours also. This reading alertness compels appreciation. Also, there is another fact, the fact that she's retained the Tamil word koor, which means broth. She's retained the Tamil original in the translation. Now, whenever a translator does this, it shows a lot of deliberate, thought-out selection. It is a selective procedure, and we have to appreciate this. Who's this person? Armstrong, Lakshmi Armstrong, has thought out a lot. It is something very admirable that she's preserved this Tamil original koor in her translation. It certainly needs to be commended, to be appreciated. But where is the ringing note of indignation in the translation? Why don't words and idiom condense as the narrator's deep involvement and anguished concern for the children? Why doesn't this happen as it happens in the original Tamil? Why isn't there this kind of unification taking place? The carrying tone of the narrator's voice is the distinguishing feature of Karukku. This quality does not get reproduced in the English. The basic reason, of course, is that a translator is not connected with the theme and contents of the work that he or she is translating in the intimate, personal way in which the writer of the original is. Let us consider one more example of the difficulties of capturing the note, the basic note of the tone of the narrator. Here is the original. I look at the church today, and it looks like a large family gathering of the nuns and priests. And if I see who the priests and nuns are, they are all upper caste men and women. But among the Christian people at large, the majority are poor, lowly Dalits, cushioned in their seats of power, keeping under control the hordes of the poor and have-nots, keeping them drugged with empty slogans of devotion and faith, enslaving them in the name of God. They live their lives of ease. Now we can hear the note, the absolute note of anger and rage. Why doesn't this rage come in the English translation? I've always wondered, and I have not been able to get an answer to this. Perhaps you will. I don't know, since you don't read the Tamil. But this is the point, that in English translations, this just does not happen. Now, of course, there is another factor to be considered here, that the language of Karukku is a very, very colloquial, extremely colloquial dialect Tamil. Dialect is very difficult to reproduce in any language. And this factor adds to the already present difficulties of translating. English has a very different kind of sounds and acoustic system. We can understand the difficulties of Armstrong in casting Karukku into English. All English translations of Indian language writings, I think, face this problem. I don't know how it can ever be solved. They do not capture the tonal inflections, the rise and fall of the tone of voice that is present in the original, and tone, the vocal timbre of any writing, is the most important thing in it. It says a lot about the writing. But of course, you cannot easily dismiss translations of Indian writings into English. Lakshmi Armstrong, let me repeat, is a very well-known translator. She's internationally known, and I think she's won an award. I think she won the crossword contest translation award for her translation of Bama, of Karukku. She is a very well-known translator, but she faces the same problems of all translations into English. Can you dismiss English translations on that account? You can ask this question. I think not. It is not possible at all. The English translations wake you to the landscape and the landmark writings of the 20 or so languages of our country. That's a pretty big job of networking, which I don't think any Indian language can do, and that English is doing. Just for that matter, for that one reason, I think the translating of Indian languages into English has to go on, whatever the faults. We have to somehow overcome the faults and go on with it till something else happens. I don't know what other language will come up, but at the moment it has to be English. Bama's Karukku in Armstrong's rendering certainly should make interesting reading for you. It should wake you to the riches of Indian languages and the writings in them. And above all, it should make you alive to the problems of translating. Good luck and happy, fruitful reading of Bama in English. I hope we'll meet again next time, and I hope we'll be able to carry on this discussion of the difficulties of translating Indian languages into English. That is all.